So, Smed, tell me the truth. You like a lass and a beard, don't you?
Oh, can't get enough of it. Girls and beards.
Oh, we're live. We're live. Hello, Nora. How are you all? Welcome to the EverQuest 12th anniversary webcast. I'm sitting here. This is my original leather outfit that I first made specifically to attend the fanfare back in those days when it was just EQ. And I've been making a costume every year since. Now, 12 years is a really long time for any MMOG to be alive, and EQ is not just alive, but thriving with an expansion pack every year without fail, sometimes more than one. If you get into any MMOG-related conversation, doesn't matter where you are, eventually people will start talking about EQ. Talks about their epic corpse runs or those incredible raids that they used to do and how difficult everything was and what a struggle it was and how much camping they had to do. And it's all delivered in the tone of the good old days when people actually had to work for a living. So now these are all events that happened sometimes 2, 5, 8, or even 12 years ago. The game has really left its mark on players regardless of what their current game of choice is. And joining us today is one of the architects of EverQuest and Sony Online Entertainment's long-standing success, our very own CEO, John Smedley, also known as John Smed or The Smed. I just call him Sir. How you doing, John?
Doing well, doing well. Thanks. Nice to see all of you. Thank you for joining in, and hopefully you'll get to hear a little bit about the history of both Norath, the game, and the company behind it.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about the really old days, because my first day in Norath was March 16th when I logged in, crashed, logged in, crashed, logged in, crashed, because you guys had a gazillion people show up at once. But before EQ shipped, what was the biggest worry on your mind?
Probably getting it finished. We started out with EverQuest. It was just an idea that I had about making an online role-playing game because I love playing online games. Played a lot of online games back then. And the idea kind of first came to me probably in about late 95. And so the first concern was getting it approved, and I managed to convince my boss, a guy named Kelly Flock, to go ahead and let us greenlight it. But I had a very small budget, about $800,000. Back then, that was a lot of money to make a game in general, and the idea of, we didn't know what we didn't know. So $4.5 million later, we launched EverQuest. So the biggest concern was keeping it going, because I, along with a few others, started the San Diego studio of Sony Computer Entertainment. Back then it was called 99 Studios. And the problem was, it was a sports studio. And a lot of people aren't really, don't know that the history here actually came from NFL Game Day and NHL Face Off, MLB Pennant Race, some older sports games. And God, I hated doing sports games. I hate sports games. And we were doing them, but I had also managed to start up a PC development group. So simply keeping the game in development was a real challenge. And we hired, the first two hires were Brad McQuaid and Steve Clover. Steve was actually the one that thought up the name EverQuest. Great name.
Great, yeah.
And it's, it's been a great ride from there.
So did you ever think that EQ might fail? I mean, did it keep you up at night? So did you have a backup plan as a career?
It never occurred to me that EverQuest would fail simply because it was so much fun to do, and making it, it's a passion. When you're doing something that you're passionate about and it's fun, you don't think about failure. And I think the great games that I see come out, and there's so many great ones, they're made by people that really care about what they're doing, and we loved what we did. We had two things in our lives outside of our families. It was, making EverQuest and playing Magic the Gathering, and we did both of them in great quantities, and it was an awesome time.
So, okay, so you thought that the game would do okay, but back then in March 16th, 1999, did you ever figure in your wildest dreams that this was going to be such a runaway success that a dozen years later we'd be still sitting here talking about the same live game?
Absolutely not. We figured, and I remember the original budget, we figured it was, about a 2-year run that we'd have. Because back then, remember that Ultima Online had only just launched, about a year or so before, maybe a year and a half, 2 years, somewhere in there. It wasn't known how big these things could get. It wasn't known how successful they would be. Plus, we had the added bonus of, we were the first MMO to require a 3D graphics card, which was some say a bold step at the time. A lot of us said it was, a lot of the naysayers were saying it was stupid. So, but we decided to go forward with it. And I'm really, really glad we made that decision. We made the right call. So, no, I never thought it would be this successful. But within, minutes of opening the beta, we knew. It was, by the time the beta was in full force, we knew we had something special on our hands. How big it could get? No, we never knew that. And it's been a great ride since.
During launch week, of course, the servers, they creaked and groaned and exploded with players, and you had to put up some extra servers really, really fast. I remember that whole thing. I think I ended up switching servers a couple of times before my guild finally settled down on one and we started playing there. So it was very clear early on that this was going to be a really big thing. But were you prepared for the massive response you got?
We were prepared for what we thought was coming. It's interesting because within the first few hours of EQ launching, it started to go down, and the reason that it went down is we had bought a T1 line, and we thought that would be big enough, and then we grew that, and we got what's a much larger internet connection right before launch, and we thought that would be big enough, but what it turned out is that our internet provider had oversold their bandwidth by a massive amount, because back then the internet was not nearly as prolific as it is today, and so there just simply wasn't the bandwidth. Fortunately, and this was pure luck, we happened to live literally right over an AT&T facility. We made friends. It turned out a bunch of the guys in their NOC played our game, so we made friends with them. They were loaning us $50,000 what's called VIP cards, which go inside routers. $50,000 cards. They were literally handing these things to us to keep our game up. They weren't charging us for them. We ended up going with AT&T, and then it's been a good relationship with them since. But those were tough times.
Is it true you caused an outage in San Diego?
We did. We caused the internet outage in San Diego. The provider that we had at the time, UUNet, we literally brought down everybody, and there were some pissed off people because one of the companies that was on the pipe that we were using was, and I forget the name of the company, but they did global trucking, including satellite tracking of where the trucks are, and they could no longer track where their trucks were. It was pretty funny.
That is pretty epic. So now EQ was a genre-defining game, really. It was the first true 3D MMOG, and that's what I really remember. The first time I logged in, and I was still, let me tell you, I was skeptical about that whole monthly fee thing. But when I logged in and realized that I was in this world, like truly immersed in it, and all those people there were real people running around me and helping me recover me corpses, it was incredible. I mean, looking back on the development of the game now and the game's core mechanics, what would you have changed if you'd been able to?
Personally, the thing I would have liked to have seen more of was player versus player. I think, and I see this in WoW and I see it in other games, I think we were so PvE-centric that we didn't give enough meat there for the PvP players. I mean, certainly we had some rabid PvP players, but we didn't put enough development time into that aspect of the game, and I think a lot of that came from kind of Brad's outlook on that, and he kind of thought of it as much more of a PvE-centric game, which is why I think EverQuest and EverQuest 2, to a large extent, today have a much higher concentration of PvE players.
Yeah, interesting. So were there any features that you had to leave out of EverQuest? I mean, in any game's development, you've got feature creep, you've got a deadline, you have to make it to the door, and so some great ideas have to be left behind on the cutting room floor. Did you experience that with EverQuest?
Oh, everybody on the EverQuest development team can tell you what the thing that I wanted in there that we did not get in for launch, or for the second game, as a matter of fact, but you will get it in the third one.
Oh.
Is seamless world. I never liked the idea of zone-based. I think it's, while there are some advantages to it, certainly, just at its core, I think it's a point in time where where it takes you out of the immersion. So that's the one and only feature that I really wanted in there that we just couldn't pull off technically at that time. It was just a bridge too far for us.
Mm-hmm. Now, players, of course, as we've learned over the years, they're very, very clever beasts. So how did the original team respond to the possibly unexpected behaviors and play styles, such as the use of kiting as a mechanic or training to zone to lose aggro? Those are two classic things from EQ. Were you surprised by these things? What sorts of things annoyed or surprised you the most?
I can't say annoyed, because when you make a game like EverQuest, watching the players and how clever they are, you're not kidding when you say they're clever. You build a big epic dragon encounter to be with 20 people, and you think, oh, this is going to be an awesome fight. 20 people are going to come and they're going to have this epic battle. And 80 people show up to the party and kill it in 5 seconds. And all the players are thinking, oh, why didn't you guys think of that? And because we didn't, because back then this was new, and it was like a duh moment. But after the fact, that's easy. So what did we do? Well, we did what most tried and true MMO designers do. They say, oh, all of a sudden this dragon has death touch, and he can randomly summon you to him and kick your ass right in front of you. And we effectively cheated, and I think we've learned a lot from those mechanics, and the designers have gotten so good at kind of working around that. But you see it still in all kinds of games today, including ours. That you can never completely anticipate player behavior, nor do we want to. That's part of the fun of running these games too, is watching what the players do. Once we make this beautiful world, they get to tell us if it's any fun, and they get to show us how broken we left it or what we did right or wrong. So it's a delight, and it's also something that we think about every day when we're doing our work.
Now, we talked a little bit about the longevity of the game and the frequency of the expansions and so on. I actually have a list here. Last year at Fanfare, one of the impromptu contests I decided to run on stage was, come on up here if you think you're an EQ expert and list off all of the expansions. And to my surprise, somebody managed to get them all. Did these all show up? Can we get them all on the screen at one time? We'll just move it up and down until you can see them all.
That's impressive.
I mean, it is incredible how many expansions. And the guy just sat there and he rattled them off. He did the first few very easily. And then he sort of closed his eyes and he's thinking through his head. And I'm thinking, this poor man is watching his life flash before his eyes because he got them all in the right order. And then, crazily enough, at Dragon Con, I was relating that tale. And one of the guys there was able to stand up and do exactly the same thing. So now I don't think we should really call Guinness and see if there's been ever that many full expansions launched for any MMO in the history of MMOs. It's really terrific, and they're still coming.
They are indeed, and they're going to for years to come.
So what do you attribute this continuing success? I mean, it's a really competitive marketplace with all sorts of brand new modern games with cool mechanics and fancy graphics, and why is EverQuest still so successful so long after launch?
I think the number one reason is the bonds that our players have made with each other. I think we've made a great game and a wonderful place for people to play, but I think what makes it special is the players and their relationships with each other. So, a lot of these players, they meet their guild mates at fanfares, they become deep, deep friends, and EverQuest was kind of the catalyst for that, and they stay in there to have fun together, and to me that's a wonderful thing about it. Also, EverQuest is still, relative to a lot of MMOs, a lot harder core. And that means something to a lot of people. I know on a personal basis, I prefer harder core games. I was an advocate early on for a permadeath server, one server where people could transfer their characters to, and it would be permadeath if you did. As a copy of your character. You could still have your character elsewhere. Just to see, as a contest, to see who could get to the highest level. I've been a big advocate for stuff like that. I like the idea of challenge, and I think EverQuest offers that. And you're seeing that now with the progression server with people.
Incredible,
great response to that. People love that. And I think that competitiveness could make for something pretty cool there. But it's a little bit of a crazy idea, but I think it would be fun to do. I
think you'd find that the EQ crowd, I mean, it really is a different audience. We've got EQ and EQ2, and a lot of people are surprised that the two games can coexist, but their communities are very, very different between the two.
Very much so.
And the EQ player community itself has matured with the game itself. Millions of people have walked through Norath over the years, and many of us who were bright young things, I was young once too, and we're now gainfully employed, we're having kids or grandkids, or heck, some of us are moving into middle-age spread. And I've seen guildmates get married to each other in real life and they still carry on playing these games, and they settled down. But can you comment on how you feel that age and gender demographic has evolved over time in EverQuest?
Over the years, we've gotten more female players, so we're up to about 80-20 now, and it didn't start that way. They've aged for sure. You know, a lot of our EverQuest players started out. Our average age, I think, was 33 when we launched. It's now about 38, so it's moved up. It's been moving up. To me, it's a testament to the games, the power of both EverQuest and sort of the medium that we work in. That bonds can be so strong there that you can get other family members to play. Many players have their spouses playing. Many players meet their spouses. A little known story about SOE is our general counsel, a guy named Andy Zaffron, actually met his wife playing EverQuest. True story.
But I met my husband as well.
Yeah,
Same
we've
thing.
we've seen all kinds of stuff like that. It's one of the most gratifying things about running this company is seeing that kind of stuff happen and seeing the families at fan fairs. That to me is what this is all about. If I could pick any one thing I love the most, but you know, the age we make games now for all ages. I've got 4 kids, and my youngest 2 play Free Realms. My older 2 play EverQuest 2, and there's kind of a deep bond that I have with my kids because I can play our games with them, which is a lot of fun.
The EverQuest franchise, of course, it's a very strong one. It's stood the test of time unbelievably well and shows no sign of giving up anytime soon in either original EQ or EQ2. So can you maybe share a little bit more about the next iteration of Norath? You gave us a little glimpse of it last fanfare. Do you have anything new to carry? Will it carry any lessons that you learned from your experiences in EQ?
I think it's going to carry a lot of lessons. I think one thing that I want to get out there is that we're not rushing it, as is obvious since EQ2 launched, you know, almost 6 years ago now, or 6 years ago now, and we're not trying to push something out there that's evolutionary. We're trying to put something out there that's revolutionary. We helped to invent this genre, and we intend to change it pretty radically with what we're doing there. You know, I think you can expect, without giving away too much, you can expect much more of a world, and by that I mean a real place that is, the world itself is a lot more alive, more sandbox kind of esque feel to the game. I think people are going to be pretty surprised by the direction we're going, and core EverQuest and EverQuest 2 fans are going to feel right at home. What we're really doing with the next EverQuest is, think of it almost like the latest Star Trek movie, where it was a reimagining of this brilliant, you know, franchise. That's what we're doing with it. This isn't, we're not just trying to, you know, advance the timeline, put better graphics, and do a little bit more. We're trying to really move the bar with this thing, and I think players are going to be pleased by that.
That sounds exciting. Now, I know that you have to be off to another meeting right now. What sort of meeting is that you had to cut us off?
Planetside 2. Another meeting I got to go to.
All right.
Thank you.
You did not hear that here first. Thanks, John. Thank you all for joining in with us, and be sure to take part in all of the different events that we have running for EverQuest. Keep in mind that even if you play EverQuest 2, you have an opportunity to take on some of the great adversaries of the past and loot their fat loots and run off happy. So just have a grand time during these anniversary celebrations. Remember that it's also brew day. I'm wearing my proper green to facilitate the appropriate level of drinking, because I tell you, I have to start building up alcohol tolerance in time for fanfare this year. Be well, all.